Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes, and here are four big stories for today. It is Saturday, September 14th. So, will they or won't they? The big question is, will the West allow Ukraine to use their missiles as a long-range attack into Russia? Well, The Guardian was reporting yesterday that the U.S. and Britain have authorized Ukraine's Storm Shadow strikes against Russia, but are not ready for an announcement. I'm not sure what they're waiting on, but that's what they claim. President Zelensky is still calling for more ATACMS missiles to hit Russian targets and the ability to be able to use that. So nothing's changed there. This is the latest article that I saw on this. Ukraine renews calls to the West to approve. This was just a few hours ago in AP News. So it's clear that nothing has actually changed yet officially, but we'll let you know when that happens. Keir Starmer left Washington without approval for Storm Shadows. It looks like Putin's bluster worked. Appeasement carries the day. Shame. This is Sir William Browder. I think he's absolutely right. I don't know how you explain this as anything except for appeasement. It is possible that there's something that we don't know, but it looks like Putin has done a successful job deterring the West. Here's Jake Sullivan is invited to Kharkiv to try to explain to people who are currently hiding from both Russian drones and glide bombs why exactly they can't defend themselves. And no change to U.S. policy on long-range missiles. It's a good question. Now, here's Putin talking about it, and so this would mean that the NATO and the U.S. are at war with Russia. Here's how Putin explains it. I'll read. In recent days, we have heard and seen very high-level discussions in the UK and USA about the Kyiv regime being able to strike deep into Russian territory with long-range Western weapons. And it appears that this decision is either about to be taken or apparently already has been taken at all. And this thing, of course, is extraordinary. I wanted to ask to comment on what is happening. Putin, there is an attempt to substitute concepts because we are not talking about authorizing or banning the Kyiv regime from striking across the entire territory. It is already striking with the help of drones and other means. But when it comes to using high precision, long range, Western made weapons, it is a completely different story. The fact is that we have already mentioned this, and any experts will confirm that both in our country and in the West, the Ukrainian army is not able to strike with modern long-range precision systems of Western manufacture. So the first question is, why not? Why wouldn't you let them strike with Western weapons of manufacture? Why does Ukraine have to fight with one hand tied behind its back while you can pummel it all day long? It cannot do this using intelligence from satellites, which Ukraine does not have. This data is only from EU satellites or from the United States, in general from NATO satellites. This is the first thing. The second, and very important, maybe the key, is that only NATO servicemen can in fact enter flight information and assignments, and these missile systems, Ukrainian servicemen cannot do this. And so this is not about allowing the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia with these weapons or not. It's about deciding whether NATO countries are directly involved in a military conflict or not. Okay, so we're going to stop there. That's not it at all. He just has sour grapes about them being able to enter into that. It's not. They've got targeted missiles of where things are, targeted satellite data from other sources about where Russian positions were, and he wasn't squawking about that. So Joe Biden was right to say, I don't accept the idea that using Storm Shadow missiles to bomb targets in Russia would be tantamount to NATO starting a war with Moscow. It's really not. And just because you say it is, doesn't mean that it actually is according to the laws of war. Of course, Maria Zakharova was saying something different. Russian Foreign Ministry says Moscow will respond to the withdrawal of US and UK permission to hit Russian territory with long-range missiles in a way that, quote, won't seem like a little. Okay, unquote. John Bolton replied, like, because they usually are saber rattling at this point, right? And saying, nuclear weapons or something along those lines. John Bolton, this is Trump's former national security advisor, who quite openly broke with Trump. With any nuclear blackmail or threat, it must be said personally and publicly, if Russia uses nuclear weapons in Ukraine, Vladimir Putin will be signing his own death warrant. You have to be very, very clear, because the only thing that they seem to understand is the use of force. Okay, Darth Putin, the parody site, says, "What will I bomb?" in response to long-range weapons being approved. And this is how tragic this whole thing is. The leading answer is an orphanage. Right? Now, I know this isn't a real survey, but that's the kind of thing that Putin might actually do. He sure has done hospitals, schools, and shopping centers. So, okay. A month from now, just remember that as we track the cargo of 220 Iranian ballistic missiles unloaded at a Russian port, travel to storage sites by train, the Biden administration refused to allow Ukraine to destroy them because they were in Russia. And these missiles, these 220 missiles, are going to cause death and destruction within Ukraine. So where are we? I saw this and I thought, this looks like exactly where we are. My therapist gave me this and said, that's you. That's exactly right. He can get out of this cage anytime he wants. All he has to do is decide that he wants to get out. So this was a slip of the tongue. And it's instructive only because it's actually highlighting what has happened. So accidentally telling the truth, red lines for allies, safe zones for enemies. This was in terms of what we're focused on, says the press secretary, Pat Ryder, who's a good guy, and he just misspoke when he accidentally mistook one word. In terms of what we're focused on, it's on enabling Russia to defend its sovereignty. Now, it was just a slip. Like, I've confused those. I've confused Ukraine and Russia as I was trying to speed through these. It can happen, but that's kind of what they're doing, is enabling Russia to defend its sovereignty by not allowing Ukraine to actually hit it. Gabrielis Landsbergis, the foreign minister from Lithuania, said, "I'm not here to deliver thoughts and prayers. I'm here to commit to victory." I like the way he turned this phrase, as short as it takes. Yeah, it's like we want to drag it out. It's fascinating. Okay, this was interesting. So Russia is relocating planes out of ATACMS range. I reviewed satellite images of airfields from 2023 and 2024. There's a huge difference. So now just the talk about the ATACMS being like, it's like Biden is trying to send a signal, look, we're about to let this happen, so you better move those planes. I don't know. Either way, if the planes are moved back, that's a good thing. It would be better to bomb them first, but it's a good thing that they're further back, and it'll be more time for the Russians to have to get, engaged to get closer. Okay. So I talked about that during my live stream this morning, and if you missed that live stream, you can come see it. I try to answer every question that anybody posed to me. I also want to correct one thing that I said in the live stream. I was talking about how Shaheds, I thought I said that a majority of them were shot down with MANPADS, and I might have said majority or a lot. I'm not sure what I said exactly, but it was, I looked it back up. 35% of Shahed drones were shot down with MANPADS. That's a shoulder-fired missile. That's still a pretty staggering number, so just correcting the record. All right. This is a metaphor for U.S. foreign policy. See here, we dodged this bullet and, well, okay, didn't have the accident here, but now we're having the accident there. Okay, Michael McFall says, any American president must take seriously a threat of escalation from Putin or Xi. No president wants to take actions that would trigger a direct war with Russia or a nuclear attack on Ukraine. But leaders must weigh the cost of action against the cost of inaction. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Just doing nothing doesn't mean that an action hasn't been taken. By not doing this, they're also causing a different action. Okay, second big story. I know that first one took a little while. Russia strikes on Ukrainian infrastructure have caused electricity prices to double this summer in southeastern Europe, highlighting the vulnerability of EU energy markets. Okay, so the Greek prime minister is particularly upset about this, calling it a prolonged crisis. He said that electricity prices had risen from 60 euros per megawatt hour to 130 per megawatt hour in August. So there were a number of factors involved, like hot weather, power generation failures, low rainfall, which keeps hydro electric plants from generating what they should be generating. But of course, the Russian attacks on Ukraine's power grid were a key factor. And Kyiv was previously a net exporter of electricity, and that was before, well, Russia was using these missiles that they should have been able to shoot down, but didn't have the air defense to shoot down into Ukraine. So Putin's getting a twofer. He's getting the direct effect of knocking out electricity in Ukraine, but that's then becoming a imposition on the Europeans, who are now paying higher prices because the Ukrainians are drawing electricity. Ukraine has increased its electricity imports nearly 6 times more than in 2023. So this is yet another price that Russia's destructive war is imposing on our economies. And so I quote at the very end from a Greek government spokesperson: "We feel there's a mini energy crisis that no one is talking about." There is. This is not the only tax. There are other taxes on the European people around the world for Putin's aggression. We're all paying for Putin's decision. Okay. Third big story, Bloomberg. It talks about China, but let's relate it. China raises a retirement age for the first time since 1978 due to demographic problems. The retirement age for men will be raised from 60 to 63, and for women from 50 to 55 to 55 to 58. The reason for the increase is the rise in life expectancy and a reduction of state pension budget. Now, so the reduction of the state pension budget. That's interesting. So it's not just going to be China. This kind of thing will happen in Ukraine and Russia and other places. But what I want to focus you on is this. You have to try to think about what's going on in Ukraine as it's within a system. And so things like the demographic shifts that have happened, where I talked about yesterday, how Ukraine is -6% in its demographics. Like, it's actually going backwards as far as the population right now. That's going to be a problem. So listen to people like Peter Zion about these kind of things, about demographic kind of issues, because even if he's wrong, he will still get you thinking the right direction. And I'm not saying he's wrong or wrong all the time or anything like that, but he'll start getting you thinking about how to be thinking about what's going on. Okay, 103, fourth big story. 103 Ukrainian defenders are back from Russian captivity today. That was great news. The 103 Russian conscripts captured in Kursk and swapped in a prisoner exchange today were taken right back to military bases near the front line, according to their shocked family members. Earlier, they expressed their delight in being able to go home to see their families, but that's not in the cards. I'm sure there's going to be a time of interrogating them to find out what exactly happened, to see if they, why didn't you mount a defense or something along those lines. But I wonder what will be next. Okay, Jay in Kyiv. To any of Russia's neighbors that happen to be harboring centuries-old grievances, Putin's obsession with destroying Ukraine has depleted the Russian military to the point that school kids are freely prancing across the Russian border unencumbered. Here is a news story. Finnish school kids crossed the Russian border during a school trip. 10 teenagers were in the border area without permission. And yeah, that's where Russia is right now. Okay, different time, same enemy. Basically the same stuff. Like there's not the ideological motivation here, the communist ideology driving totalitarianism, but there is an authoritarian state that's doing what this authoritarian state that was the Soviet Union did to other places in Europe at other times. Okay, last thing that I want to show you, each donation doubles, support Ukraine's unit. So this is a drive from the Center for Euro Resilience. It's going on right now. This is the video, it's the fundraiser. You can tune in. In fact, please go tune in immediately after you're done watching this. Go right over to the European Resilience Initiative Center. I'll drop the link below so that you can see this and you can hear more about what's going on as they're working on their fundraiser. It's a $50,000 24-hour marathon. And so I wish them all the best of luck, and I'll be tuning in just a little bit myself. Hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.